who was a forestry worker and had a pretty aggressive encounter along with another one of his coworkers. Travis also talks about an encounter he had with federal agents after his Sasquatch encounter, and he describes to us what took place.
Well, Travis, let's start by talking about your encounter then. How long ago did it take place?
This happened July 30th of 1997.
Okay, so what were you doing right leading up to this event?
Well, what happened, it's kind of the same job that the gentleman you had from Tennessee on. We did not work for the Forest Service. We were more like kind of like laborers.
Sort of contractors, huh?
Yeah, not even that. One of my good friends from high school would go up every summer and work with his uncle, who his uncle did work for the Forest Service at Glacier National Park. And I wanted to go every summer. My parents wouldn't let me. Finally, I'm old enough to make my own decisions. I had my own money. I went. Money was not good. But, got to camp out in Montana. The only thing that I hated doing was having to clean up dead animal carcasses. Other than that, I loved everything about it. And we more or less just did the crap jobs, if you want to be honest. Whatever was too cheap to pay a contractor to do, and just you could send 4 young guys to go get it done, that's what we did. I got up there first week after Memorial Day weekend, and as I said, it was awesome. It was everything that I always dreamed Montana of being. To get to the incident, what had happened is it was actually July 27th. And are you familiar with Glacier National Park?
I'm not, but I've been through Montana a few times.
Well, in this certain area, it's now called BYU, Idaho, but at the time it was Rich College. There was the girls' volleyball team there was going to go do kind of like just a coming together as a team, a camp out at Mount Stanton. That's kind of on the northeastern part of Glacier National Park. It's by Lake McDonald area. It's a really beautiful area. A couple of the girl volleyball players' dad was the gentleman who was getting it all together, and he had called ahead and said, hey, there's a couple dead mule carcasses up here, and it's kind of a trashy area. Can we get somebody to come clean it up before the team gets there and whatnot? And I wanted nothing to do with it because I could not even stand the smell of a dead animal carcass. It just made me sick.
Right.
My best friend from school wanted to go see the girls from the volleyball team. Unbeknownst to me, he volunteered us. Pissed me off. I was madder than hell. I did not care about the girls. I really did not like the smell. I didn't tell him I was mad. We got all our stuff together because when you go to areas like this for special little jobs, you go there and camp at the nearest forest station there. You just set up camp there, and if there's something for you to do, they send you to do the little job. We got there. We cleaned up the mule deer, set up some tents, had some dinner with the volleyball team. Fine, we did whatever. We went and fixed a couple trails around the area. The morning of July 30th, my buddy who I was there with, his uncle called and said, this was roughly around 5:40 in the morning. We always had to have a radio on that, hey, the coach and the volleyball team and the 3 dads, they cleaned up camp because they said there was a horrible odor around the camp, and they kept hearing that there was a bear constantly just walking around the camp. So they all packed up and left like at 3 this morning. I need you guys to get over there and see what's going on. My head, I'm thinking I have to clean up another dead animal carcass, and I was pissed. Nothing of anything. I mean, nothing of a danger. I didn't even care if a bear. I just was like, I have to clean up another dead animal carcass. Gosh dang it. Don't say nothing as we're driving over to the area, and this is right on the north side of Lake McDonald, which is right below Mount Stanton. And we get to the lake. You can instantly smell it smelled like dead skunks, like when you run over a skunk, instantly in the area, and it was all over. We call my friend's uncle on the radio, said we don't see nothing, we can definitely smell it. He told us that we needed to stay put in the truck. He would be there in about an hour, and then we would all kind of hike around to see maybe if a bear or something else had got an animal or something. And there was even reports that the wolverines were coming out. So that was more of a fear that maybe a wolverine was attacking smaller prey. My buddy, he's all like, well, hey, let's go walk around, see if we can see nothing. I won't lie, I was a jerk. I snapped back at him and I said, your uncle said we're supposed to wait in the effing truck. We're not supposed to go out and do nothing. And he gave me a surprised look, and I said, well, I didn't even want to come here. I wish you wouldn't have volunteered us. And long story short is we got into a little bit of an argument, and he just took off walking. He grabbed the mountain bike out of the truck and started walking with it. And I was like, hey, you got the radio. I need the radio for when your uncle calls. I grabbed the mountain bike, went up behind him. We dropped the mountain bikes off, and we just started walking up the trail. It's called Grant's Trail for the Glacier Grant they have there. We started walking up the trail. My buddy was roughly about 20 feet off to the left of me. I'm walking up. We're still kind of bickering a little bit, just snapping at each other, and I got kind of ahead of him up on the trail. I'm going walking, and if you could picture looking at a clock, at 10 o'clock, as I turned to look to my left where 10 o'clock would be, I just noticed a huge creature laying on its left side, and it was tearing out the center of a tree. I just saw a piece of the tree come ripping out. And I stopped and stared at it for a second, and I saw where the head was on its side, looked at its whole body laying down, and the first words that came out of my mouth were, oh my God, that's a Bigfoot. And time stopped. Time stood still. I don't know how else to describe it. And my buddy had walked up, and he goes, oh my God, Travis, there's a Bigfoot. And it hurt us. Now, well, it was laying on its side, on its left side, and it looked like it was using its left arm to pick up the tree while it was digging it out. I remember the tree just dropping. Take a look, turning the whole upper part of his left body. And as I was telling Wes earlier, the only way I can describe how fast he exploded from where he was laying down is when you blow a balloon all the way up and you let the balloon go, how fast it just twirls. That's how fast he got up. And he jumped up right by the tree, this huge tree that was laying on the ground, and he looked directly at me. He had caramel, dark brown eyes. I never heard anything. I don't remember hearing anything. He looked me in the eyes, and I instantly felt like I was going to throw up. And I just stood. According to my friend, he said he was growling the whole time. I never heard it. I had the radio at that time, and some static from the radio came in because someone was trying to call on the radio. And that snapped me out of it. And whatever it did, whatever that static did, it set this Bigfoot, Sasquatch creature, evil thing, whatever, into an ungodly rage. He just started shaking from left to right with his upper part of his body. Then I heard the roar, and I can't describe it. I ran first. I took off. And I was crying. I had tears flying down my eyes because the ghost in the bedroom was true. Behind the clouds, or, every horror story you ever realize, it's true. my buddy was running behind me, and this is the only thing we can think of. Because when I turned and looked back, he was already to the area that we were standing at. And my God, it took him maybe a second and a half. And my buddy just sprayed they gave us little cans of mace if we came across any mountain lions or cougars or anything. And he just sprayed the mace, and we think that he ran into it. That's the only thing we can stop because he slowed up. I ran to the left towards Stanton Lake. I yelled at my friend that, "I'm jumping in the lake, I'm jumping in the lake, I'm jumping in the lake." And I did, which was stupid because the ridge was about 15 feet off the air, and the lake was only like 3 feet deep. And I sprained the hell out of my left ankle, but my buddy slid down the ridge. We saw it. I saw it standing at top of the ridge, and it just picked up a little baseball-sized rock. More underhand sidearm, went right at me, and it went right over my head. And I saw that my buddy was running around to the bike. I was screaming at him to please wait. I got to the other side of the lake. I never saw it. I was completely wet. And I'll tell you, there's two different kind of fears. When my buddy got to the bikes about eight seconds before I did, and he left, I was terrified because I'm behind him now. I'm now, if this thing's chasing after us, I'm the one that's there for him to grab. And so I started screaming, "Wait, wait, wait." And he wasn't waiting. And got to the bike. We got back to the truck. He told me to call his uncle on the radio, and I said I dropped it in the lake. We left the bike, took off in the truck. We met his uncle right down by the Forest Service by Grant Glacier. His uncle is First Nation tribe. Told him our experience. He didn't talk to me. He talked to his nephew, my friend, and it was that way for the next day and a half. And Wes, this is going to kind of get into your buddy.
My buddy.
Well, I tried to call and see if I can get more. After I talked to you, I started making phone calls, and it's still the same thing that they know. We started talking. The uncle would never talk to me, and I don't know if it's just because I wasn't of a tribe. He would talk to my friend, and my friend's like, he's just telling us we kind of got lucky, and we just kind of came upon a rogue one, and like a rogue one. And I told him, like, we just came across a Bigfoot and it chased us. This ain't, just something random, a bear and a cub. This is a Bigfoot. And he's like, I know. And he's not really telling me nothing. And I said, you guys were just over there talking for like 2.5 hours. What were you guys talking about? Says he knows them from around the mountain. Some of them come from Canada and throughout the year. I mean, sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. And he does not want me saying his name now. I called him this afternoon. He just wants me to call him his friend. But I was like, you understand that we just got chased by a Bigfoot? And I started crying again. I said, why am I the only one who's realizing how scary this really is? And he's all like, I don't know what to tell you. He's not telling me nothing. And so I went up and asked him, and he said it's probably the same one, the same Sasquatch he calls them Chiantes. He doesn't call them Sasquatches. He calls them Chiantes. That killed 2 campers back in 1994. They knew that Chiante did it. They were very well aware. And so when I heard your gentleman the other night talk about the paper going out from Glacier National Park, I'm almost positive that has to be the same incident, because that's what was told to us. The uncle just kept telling us, don't say nothing. People are going to make fun of you. I mean, fill it out. Just relax. Go take the next 2 days off. I couldn't. I called my mom and talked to her, and I couldn't get a hold of her, and I just kept crying. I'm not a crier, but I just kept crying. I don't know why. And I remember everywhere it was surreal. Like, everything I knew in life didn't exist anymore. My whole life was completely different now. I don't really remember that part of my life anymore. Going to the bathroom has a whole new meaning out in the wilderness. Walking to the car out in the wilderness in the middle of the night has a whole new meaning to it.
Talk a little bit about the bearded guy. So how did he come into the picture?
So on August 2nd, you had to pay for the campsites. The volleyball team paid for this area, and it was like $800 for the thing they paid for. I let it out. I started telling people, guys, we got chased by a Bigfoot up there. I think these guys were having a Bigfoot around it. Instantly started getting made fun of. August 2nd, right at 9 a.m., Gary Callahan is his name, pulled up in the new Ford Explorer Sport models, a 1997, everything. I know it because I wanted one of these kind of vehicles. And he got out, and I remember thinking, God, that's a big guy. My buddy's uncle goes, oh, God. And he's like, do not fight with this guy. Do not argue with this guy. Just say your P's and Q's. In front of everybody. I mean, I think there was like 20 people out there. He's all like, where's the two effing idiots that can't tell a bear and a deer apart? And I didn't know he was talking about us, truthfully. And everybody pointed over towards us. And he came right on me. And he's like, you really don't know the difference between an effing bear and he kept saying mule deer. And I just stared at him, and he's like, what? Why are you telling everybody some elaborate story? And he kept saying it for everybody in the area to hear. And it was embarrassing as all get out. It was terrifying at the same thing. I very rarely have to look up at guys. I'm 6'4" myself. And I just said, sir, if that was a bear, that was the most deformed-looking bear I've ever seen. And he goes, maybe your eyes are the ones that are deformed. My friend's uncle came around, and he's like, Gary, come here. And he goes, why are you starting all this crap? I'm getting called up here. I don't want to be up here. And now I got to go check out this bear because two idiots think they know what they're talking about. It was just comments that he would say it loud enough for everyone to hear how ridiculous it was for us to suggest that it was a Sasquatch. And he was not happy that his name got out. I do know that. And he's all like, what's my name? You know my name. It's Bear. Don't say Gary. He said that to the uncle. That's why when I heard you guys start talking about it, I was like, that has to be the same guy.
Let me ask you something. Wes mentioned to me that actually his father had some sort of an incident there. Is that correct?
Correct. Todd Callahan. Now, when his uncle drove us down to Billings to fly home, I begged him. To this day, Will, I still don't know. It still makes me mad. It was only years later of just constantly calling that they finally started opening and telling me things of what they believe of the cannibal thing. But he said that this guy is kind of a known guy for him because his dad is the only known man to actually produce a body with two First Nation scouts. And he presented it to the Army and the Forest Service in the 30s, right before the 1940. And it was documented, pictures. Back then, I mean, you're probably familiar with this. People say, why aren't there more stories of it in the old days? Because it wasn't known as to be this mysterious animal. It was known. People knew it was there. It wasn't talked about as man, there's something out in this woods. People knew it as a booger, whatever it was called. People knew it existed. So it was just kind of a common story, but he produced a body that kind of made him more of an expert. And apparently his son, Gary, picked up that knowledge and knows apparently everything about him.
Do you happen to know what agency he works for?
I tried to find that out because I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't. And I have not seen him since August 2nd of 1997. I tried calling everybody this afternoon. No one called me back. I will keep finding out, and I will get it right to you.
Okay. We did have a police officer that photographed, and I'm sure it's the same individual and his partner, photographed their vehicle with the plates and ran the plates, and it came back Homeland Security.
Yeah, that's what Les was telling me earlier. When he pulled up at this time, the only reason I know the Ford Explorer is because I wanted one. And it was the dark black, everything. I was like, oh, that's the new sport. I want that. And it had government plate. And if you remember what the old government plate was, it was the big U.S. government letters on it, and it did not have Montana sticker on there. It just said U.S. government. Again, I tried to call everyone today, and no one called me back, but I will keep trying to find out if they know anything. But I do know his name is Gary Callahan, and he grew up in Dillon, Montana. And I don't care if he's listening to this because he intimidated me once, and he will never do it again.
Yeah, I probably would have punched him in the mouth if he would have come up on me like that. But I know you were younger at the time, but you come up standing over the top of me, and you're probably going to get it in the mouth, especially the way he was talking to you. But you know what's interesting about that, Travis, is that tactic, he really hasn't changed his tactic over like the last 18 years. He hasn't changed his tactic. It's the same type of tactic. He kind of calls you out in front of everyone. He stands over the top of you like he's a tough guy. I'm telling you, man, guys like this, they can flash their badge all they want, but they might come across a guy who's not going to put up with it. He's not going to put up with this crap.
Well, it always just bugged me because he never went to my friend. It was me. And
Any thoughts on the way it came to you?
Because I was the one talking. To this day, it's still, I mean, my buddy and his uncle, they kept to themselves. I have so many questions that, what was it doing with the tree? I mean, his uncle told me that, when they're rogue like that, they'll dig out trees and that's where they hide because they're by themselves. Well, why would they do that? Are you just telling me something to just tell me it? That doesn't make sense to me. This thing was huge. It's not going to fit in a tree. I mean, was it making
I would have said more like looking for bugs or something to eat.
Well, it's like I had actually sent you an email before because I have never let it go. And I know they want me to. I never will let it go. I firmly believe you guys are the voice for the truth, if that sounds right, without being corny. I know I've wanted for a long time to just scream and say, I had this happen to me, and I've stood alone long enough. I need help because it has controlled my life. And my wife is the one who actually found your guys' show, and it has been a godsend. It feels good to say they know. They know the size of the muscles on this thing. They're no joke. But the Gary Callahan character, I'm trying to remember now. I believe the only thing he had for his credentials was that his dad was a good tractor, an original tractor that the First Nations, the Sioux, he was one of the first white men that they embraced. They said he had the skills of not a usual plain skin tractor. He had natural instincts. And that everything was passed on to his son. And his son is someone who is an expert at it.
I'd love to get this guy on the phone. get him on the phone and start questioning this guy.
It may happen after this.
Yeah. Gary Callahan, huh?
Gary Callahan, nicknamed there. His father is Todd Callahan. He grew up in Dillon, Montana. Very nasty. He's always been nasty. Wes, I think my buddy's uncle will talk to you. I think he will, and you too will. I promise. I think he'll be more honest and open with you guys. I know he just wants me to forget, but I can't. Yeah. I can't.
This is the kind of encounter you don't forget. You never forget.
No.
I don't think it's possible to forget it.
I mean, everybody tells me they know you're there. Everybody says there's no way you're ever going to they're not going to know you're there.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
This thing was shocked. Well, no, shocked. When it turned to the left, I remember the tree falling, and then it just like slowly turned to the left, and it exploded up, and it stared directly at me. And I went, my God, that thing is huge.
Oh, no, I think it's possible to come up on them without them being aware of you. You know, especially if they're focused like that one was doing whatever it was doing. And I was going to ask you, did the material it was pulling out with the tree, did it look rotten?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, my guess it was probably looking for insects to eat.
Well, the muscles on this thing, that's the thing I've never forgotten. It was more grayish, but it was hair, and there was part of it, when it was laying on its side, you could see the back part of it was matted, real bad.
Right.
And
the first two that I ran across, that's what I said. The hair was dirty and matted.
Bad.
Yeah, right.
And it stunk like nothing you would believe.
I want to thank you for coming on the show, Travis. Thanks for sharing your encounter, and thanks for providing us with the information for Gary Callahan. We should do like a roundtable, Gary Callahan and Bob Garrett. I wonder how that would go, Will.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Bring Jack on, a few other people.
Yeah,
kind of
bring a few police officers on. He's pissed off, and
bring his fan club on.
Yeah.
Well, if he is listening to this and he's clicking in, have the balls and come on now.
Yeah.
Sorry, may not be appropriate, but
no, I think he likes
other thing.
I think he likes yelling at younger guys that probably aren't going to speak back to him. I think that's kind of more his forte. But you know what our fans should do is contact Gary Callahan, Billings, Montana. Father's Todd Callahan. We'd like to hear from you, Gary.
Say howdy.
We'll do a show with you. Travis would like to talk with you as well.
Yeah, I've gone up a little bit since that day.
Yeah. Might be a different story if you go walking up on him today.
Well, he may kick the crap out of me, but he's going to know I'm not afraid of him this time.
Yeah.
Truthfully, thank you guys for the show. I honestly believe you're the voice that I know I've been waiting for. Will, thank you. I can just sit there and just listen to you talk for hours on end and never get tired of it.
Well, Travis, you and I are going to have to meet and have a good chat sometime.
I just want to know what chased me, what has haunted my life.
I get it. I'm sure Will gets it too.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for the time. I will keep calling to see if I can get any more information, and I will shoot it off to you guys instantly. Gosh, you guys are doing everything right, and I'll stand with you if it ever gets down to the nitty-gritty of weird.
Appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and keep in touch with us.
Definitely. I already got your site for the next year, so make sure to keep it on, please.
We sure appreciate that.
Absolutely. But if you'd like to call in, if you have questions, comments, you've had an encounter, give us a call at 646-716-8791. And what I thought we'd do, Will, is right off the bat, what do you think? We should take some calls and...
Yeah, let's take a few calls and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what's been going on with, talk a little bit about the last couple shows that we've done, because I think we've somewhat stirred up a hornet's nest. But before we get to that, let's bring Chris on. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Good to be back. It was boiling on me what had happened. There's just not enough time when you got to roll through so many people, but get right down to it and just say that, I was on episode 60. I'm the guy that was living in Klamath. I was in the California Conservation Corps. People who don't know what the California Conservation Corps is, it's basically we were the grunts of civil service in the town of Klamath and abroad, all the way as far as Lake Tahoe. We were the guys that they would call on when they wanted to have bridges built or have monumental placards put in, big park benches that are made out of solid timbers, hiked way up some ungodly trail up a mountain and put somewhere overlooking a nice vista. We put those in there. But anyways, and we worked with entities such as the U.S. Forest Service, the National Park Service, the State Park Service, Caltrans, and fish hatcheries and such. Up in Del Norte, our main thing was fish hatcheries. We did a lot of fisheries work, mainly salmon and steelhead restoration. While we were there, when I had joined, during the 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks, they have what is called COMET training, and I forget what the whole thing stood for. I could go look it back up, but not now. Anyways, COMET was basically boot camp, and I was one of 20 new recruits in this boot camp, and we were all from all different parts of California. I was from San Jose. All the rest of the people were from different places. One other kid was from San Jose. Anyways, when we were in the 2 weeks of boot camp, they're basically putting us through physical training to see if we could even handle being there. And a lot of it was, some of it is classes like diversity awareness. We had to, learn about people that may be working with us. I don't know if you guys were I hope you weren't I don't know. We won't even go there. I don't want to get inappropriate on accident about flute players. I didn't hear exactly what that was about, but I think we were talking about the same thing. Yeah, the diversity training. And we had to do sexual harassment awareness because we had some females on board with us. There was 100 people there, but 10 of them were females, so you can imagine the pressure on the females up there. Anyways, during this time, we were basically, doing all this physical training. Every evening, we would go to the cafeteria. Now, up above us was the U.S. Forest Service barracks. Do a lot of mingling, but they did introduce themselves to us during the first 2 weeks. They were pretty much saying, if you guys, take this serious, you can come and work with us. Eventually, you can move up the ladder. And while we were in the cafeteria, this guy from the National Park Service was talking, and he was introducing himself and saying, I'm so-and-so, and I work with this entity. And as he was kind of bowing out and leaving it to the next person that was going to be speaking, he paused for a second before he had moved on to the next speaker, and he said, does anybody believe in Sasquatch here? And, out of the 20 new recruits that were in there at the cafeteria, well, I kind of had my hand raised just half-mast because I wasn't a full believer yet. And he said, well, you might want to pay attention to the next guy that comes up. And so this next guy, he comes up, I think his name was Mike, and he was a U.S. Forest Service bigwig there up at the center. He was the head guy in charge of the U.S. Forest Service up there in Klamath. Anyways, he starts to go on about I'm so-and-so, and the reason I'm, the guy before me introduced me this way is he just wanted to warn you guys, you guys need to do the buddy-buddy system if you guys are going to go down into town. He said up where we're at, we're 3 miles from the nearest store. You guys may need something. Some of you don't have cars. You may want to go down to the store and get something. He said, I wouldn't go do it alone. You guys should have at least 2 or 3 people with you if you make this trip into town. And he said, you could run in all kinds of things coming, there's bears and cougars, and, you guys are going to find this hard to believe, but I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me while I was doing such a run into town. He said, in my spare time, I'm a professional biker. I bike. I do like the Tour de France. I ride those bikes. Anyways, he said that when he was going down into town, it was a fair evening, not a lot of wind, no rain, pretty clear. And he said he was taking the ride down on his 10-speed, and he got into Klamath and started to make his roll towards Crescent City. He was going to go 22 miles into town into Crescent City. So he said as he's going up the grade on 101, he got to about the summit part where he starts to head back down, and he took a little relief break. He had to relieve himself. And before he could even get off his bike in the cutout there, and this is in between the town of Klamath and Crescent City, he saw a humongous, hairy, stinky animal starting to lurch towards him, kind of starts walking towards him. He said he just had enough time to kick off on his bike and start, pedaling. He said once he hit that downgrade, he did not take off the brakes until he hit the town of until he hit the town of Crescent City. He was just flying. And, I just couldn't even imagine that, I couldn't even imagine, but at that point, I was just a young man, and I still didn't really take the whole thing too seriously. I still hadn't really put all these things together that had happened. But, that's the story with that, It's almost like they were warning us, saying, Sasquatch is real, don't go down there. And so anyways, that's what happened.
That's pretty interesting, and I know that area where he was at, and there's been quite a bit of activity in that region for a long time.
Yeah, I heard the screams out there, and I just couldn't even imagine. The screams that I heard were known as the Puyallup, the Snohomish, and the Klamath. They're all the same screams. The U.S.
Very similar.
Yeah. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
I was actually at the Puyallup area back in the mid-'70s when the Puyallup Screamer stuff was going on. That's when I first met Renee DeHennon and John Green when they were investigating that.
Oh.
So I'm very familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's just enough to just make you feel like even if you had a gun, that's what I tell everybody, even if you had a gun, it's just going to feel like nothing when you hear that, because it just doesn't seem like you're going to win.
I can tell you, standing in front of 2 of these things with the rifle in my hands, it wasn't enough.
Oh man, there's a guy. I think his name was Marcus Washington. He was in the Corps with me too, and I'm trying to look him up. Me and him decided to take a trip along the trail from our center to a place called Hidden Beach one day, and when we were on the trail there, it was like it was like canopy. It was all salmonberry, but the salmonberries were probably like 10, 12 feet high, and you can reach to each side of the trail. It was like a tunnel in there. Something started bulldozing this stuff up towards, literally the vegetation came onto the trail, was starting to come onto the trail. And I told that guy, I don't know how I thought of this so fast, I told him to grab the biggest stick he could, and I did the same, and we just started beating the hell out of the bushes all around us, and whatever it was stopped.
Now, whatever was there, it was right next to the trail doing this?
Yeah. It was, and imagine now, say you're walking to your right. If you look to your right, up goes the mountain, redwoods. If you're looking to your left, I can't see the ocean, but because the vegetation's so thick, but probably about half of a city block of ocean on maybe a 45-degree slope, and then a complete drop-off. Now, where we were we could hear sea lions down below on the coast, on the rock. It's just rocks. There's no beach. I had to wonder if that was one of those things up there. I had to wonder, because I know I'm starting to learn their behavior, if it was going to take a boulder and chuck it off the cliff and hit the sea lion and go down there and get dinner, because they drop boulders on things.
Is this the same area near Crescent City?
Yep. Yeah, it's that stretch of beach right there in between the town of Klamath and Crescent City. And there's actually no beach. It's rocky coast.
It's probably more likely they were going to ambush something along the trail.
Yeah. I heard that there's an elk migration that uses that area, that trail, I think.
I was just going to say, usually deer and elk will use, established trails and things as game routes.
Yeah. See, I met friends in town that were Native Americans, and I have a friend named Jesse, and he lives in the town of Orleans. Now, I went up there with my family in 2008, and I told, they thought I was crazy because I brought up a tape recorder because I heard those screams back in 95 and back in 1988. And, I'm like 5 miles literally from Bluff Creek as the crow flies. So I brought my tape recorder. And he thought I was crazy because I brought it up there. He was 36 and I was almost 40. He didn't, we didn't hear nothing. We did hear like a fox screaming, a little fox screaming out in the back, real, sounds eerie, but it ain't nothing. You could tell it's just a little animal.
Right.
And 2 years later, we came, I'm at home and I call him to see how they doing. He calls, I talked to him, he goes, hey, he goes, dude, did I tell you what happened? And I go, what? Well, what's going on? He goes, dude, me and Isha and little Jesse, we were riding in the car down Highway 96, and we came around this bend, and there was a huge boulder in the road. And since most of his family lives along that valley there, along Highway 96,
right,
he did the right thing, moved the boulder off the road so nobody gets hurt, because it came on them so suddenly they almost got, ran into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got out the car, and he picks up this boulder, and he chucks it off the side down into the river canyon. Bam, boom, crack, bam, bam. And he said as he heard that bam, boom, crack, smack, as he rolled the boulder down, he heard the most ungodly man roar scream come off that mountain. And he went running to his car. His wife and child are in the car, windows up, radio blasting, full blast. As soon as he opens the door, they're going, what the hell is that? Get in the car, let's go. What's going on? If you don't, While he's telling me this story on the phone, I hear his son, he's only about maybe 5 or 6, go, rah, rah, rah. And I go, is that little Jesse in the background? He goes, dude, every time I tell this story now, son gets involved and starts it up, man. He finishes telling it for me. I'm like, oh, wow, dude.
Well, we appreciate you sharing it, Chris, very much.
Yeah. I
appreciate you calling in.
Give you guys a couple of things there. And I left a little thing on the blog. It's called Whistle Treats. I found 2 different things on YouTube for the paid members and for you guys to check out. I found a match just like Go Fish. One in Sierras.
Nice.
Yeah, one in the Sierras and one in Michigan, and they're identical. Amazing. Anyways,
which blog post did you post that to? Because I'll post it on the main blog.
On our post. It's
okay.
Yep, it's on the one that's created for us, for the paid members.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'll go in there and grab it. I appreciate you doing that very much. Thanks for being a member too, man. We really appreciate it.
Hey, you guys are good. You guys are well deserved for all the stuff that you guys put together, and we can all just kind of pitch in as we go, the people that are here and people that listen.
Yeah,
and,
thanks, buddy. We sure appreciate that.
We can't do it without everybody out there. So thanks to everybody, and thanks to you guys for creating this place for us.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, brothers. I'll talk to you guys sometime. Take care. Bye.
That was interesting.
Very interesting, yeah.
Looks like Shannon just got through the door here.
Hello, gentlemen.
What's going on?
Nothing.
Having
I
a
will.
little technical issues, huh?
Yeah, it's nice. I can see everything and can't I can't participate. So
Yeah,
it's taunting me tonight.
yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the Bob Garrett. I guess we decided we're going to beat it to death like a dead dog.
We
And,
should.
but before we do that, I want to bring Matt on. Matt had an encounter of his own, and then kind of had. I wanted to talk to you about one of his friends that had passed away, and kind of the circumstances that his friend had passed away. But I wanted to welcome Matt to the show.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening, Matt. Thanks for calling in, man. We really appreciate it.
Certainly.
Well, where would you like to start with? You want to talk about the two gentlemen you saw first?
Well,
and then,
I guess we can talk about my friend first.
And if you don't want to,
really,
that's if you don't want to.
I'm just not going to use his. I'm not going to use his name. Out of respect for his family.
And that's okay.
But what I will do is that's kind of the starting point to where I started to put pieces together. Anyway, my friend, I've known him since 7th grade. We've gone through school together. Joined the Marine Corps together. And we've had loose contact over the years. June of 2009, with Facebook coming on, I finally got on Facebook. I hooked up with him, and I live here in southwest Michigan along the lakeshore, Lake Michigan Lakeshore. And I invited him and his family, along to go on a little sailboat trip, around the lake a little bit, where I live. And he said, well, he had to go do some stuff, and when he gets back from his trip, he'll definitely look me up. Of course, a couple weeks later, I learned that he had passed. But when I started looking into the circumstances regarding his death, some things started not ringing really right with me, And one thing was he was going up to Canada to finish his geology degree and do an overseas study program to complete that. And he had had a fiance. He had 3 children from a previous relationship. So this guy had everything to live for. He's extremely capable. He was an infantry Marine. And he wasn't the biggest of guys, but he was definitely tenacious. The circumstances surrounding his death was that he went to a campground off the Ice Hills Parkway in the Banff National Forest. The place is called Rampart Creek Campground, and he had camped on a day, and then he was overdue because he was on his way up to, where he was supposed to complete his degree, and he was kind of just camping along the way to save money, and the guy, like I said, is capable. He's overdue, and a couple of days later, I guess they found him in the Saskatchewan River on a sandbar, dead, wearing only his running shorts, or what the Canadians call swim trunks. But he's an avid runner, and he exercises, so I doubt they were swim trunks. One thing that really struck me is that the cause of death was not drowning, and that he had sustained substantial injuries that could not be attributed to anything in the environment or where he was found that would cause this. But not only that, the Saskatchewan River flows from basically west to east, emptying into Lake Winnipeg, and he was found 8 miles or 13 kilometers northwest of his position in the Saskatchewan River. Now, how he got there, wearing nothing but his swim trunks, upstream, of a substantial, flowing river, where the drowning was not the cause of death, really got me thinking, and it really bugged me from that time, So I started over the years investigating, and much like Ken from previous shows, he had, gone to the missing 411 programs and the books and so forth, and that's kind of how I came into things, But I live my life with an open mind, and so I really started looking at it, and saying something has had caused this. My friend did not just have this happen to him. You know, and I emailed you some information, Wes, regarding this, if you ever want to take a look at it. You know.
It sounds very similar to there was a football player who was killed under similar circumstances.
Yeah, but you know, and like you said earlier, you know, a lot of these people are found without, you know, clothes or very little clothing, no shoes, no nothing. I mean, this guy, you know, if he's going kayaking, which he wasn't, you know, he would have definitely. He always, and his girlfriend said, you know, that he always wore his life vest, you know,
right,
when near a body of water with his kayak, you know, and you know, it's just a really unfortunate thing having 3 children, you know, and that happening, and you know, again, it does make me angry. You know, it makes people want to search for answers when these kinds of things happen. You know, unfortunately, the authorities, you know, they don't want to say we don't know. You know, they want to chalk it up to a probable drowning, you know, even though all the evidence and facts point to something other than, you know, the thing that they're saying that it is.
Matt, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say that sort of brings us to a point where you had some tracks you found and some people who were examining them. Can you tell us about
absolutely.
that?
So let's go to my area where I live. If you were to go on to Google Earth and you were to Google Allegan, Michigan, and you were to, say, zoom out 2 miles, you would see this very expansive forest area. The Allegan State Game Area is about 55,000 square acres long, not to mention the private property and everything else that surrounds it. And this extends all the way to the northwest, to Lakeshore where I live, and we also have a vacation property that's about 8 miles north of where I currently live right now. This whole area is lowland swamp, a lot of dunes going up towards this area. You know, a lot of it has the Kalamazoo River Basin that empties out into Lake Michigan, right where I live. So, you know, there's hiking. You know, where I live, there's hunting, there's everything. I mean, it's a sportsman paradise, literally. You have everything. You know, and we have a lot of animal life. I mean, we have coyotes, fox, deer. You know, written reports of mountain lions. You know, all kinds of things. You know, live in the area. However, recently, you know, we've had, you know, my area especially, very little deer. You know, let's go to September of last year. My wife was laying in bed. It was probably 12 o'clock, and being the bearded basement dweller that I am, I was downstairs doing some work, and she came downstairs and said, "Hey, Matt, there's somebody walking around outside in our backyard." Now, I had just completed a 300-foot fence around 3 sides of my property. And there was only one open-ended, and in the very back, I had kind of an overgrown vegetable garden that I really didn't get to this year because I was building the fence. So it kind of got overgrown, but there were vegetables in it. So, you know, I go back there, and you know, I carry a firearm with me. Basically, I have one available all the time, so I go out there with a flashlight and look around. Nothing. A couple weeks later, I'm laying in bed now. My wife is sleeping, and I hear this very distinct, heavy footstep in my backyard because she likes to sleep with the window open. She likes the cool air. And I go again. I grab my firearm, my flashlight, and I go out the front door, run around the back, and search around, and nothing there. Now, my house is a tri-level that my bedroom window is up about 10 feet off the ground, and the closest place where you can actually walk is probably about, you know, through my backyard is about 20 feet away from my window. Now, the instance with my wife, she said that something came right to the window, and she heard it stop right outside the window, and she kind of slipped out of bed and came and got me. And my daughter, who's 16, also was down below there, down below us. So she said, well, somebody's in the backyard. My wife, who I trust, would say, okay, something's in the backyard, you know, and she says it's a person. I said, is it an animal? You know, she said, no. I go outside, nothing there. A couple weeks later, like I said, I go out there after hearing these footsteps, you know, and nothing. But having heard it myself, I will say that these footsteps were extremely heavy. You know, it's not something that, I mean, if I were sneaking through somebody's backyard, you know, you wouldn't hear me, you know, and even if somebody were taking just moderate precautions not to be heard, they would not be heard. You know, it's that far away from my window, but these steps were very distinct. So, fast forward to, let's say, mid-October, we go for a hike in the Saugatuck Dunes State Park, and this is along the Lake Michigan shoreline. And this is, again, these areas are expansive. You know, they extend, you know, between farmland and roads and all the way, and then they have forested dune area with, you know, dunes, beaches, you know, you name it. And we were walking through on a hike on the North Trail at Saugatuck Dunes, and I look over, and there's a gentleman to my right that's down in the draw, that he looks at me, and he purposely steps behind some trees. And
like he was hiding from you.
Yeah, well, I found it odd, and I said to my wife, I said, "You see that guy over there?" She's like, "Yeah, he's stepped behind the trees." And she asked me, "Do you have your gun with you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." You know, so I'm not really concerned about people. You know, I can handle myself and protect my family. Sure. But then as we're going to a meadow area, there's another guy similarly dressed. Both of them had blue coats on. One guy had red on his shoulder. I would say that they didn't look associated with any, you know, like state DNR or anything, because they would be wearing green, you know. But they definitely look like academic types. The one gentleman that I did see that I got a really good look at had longer hair, kind of looked like the professor type. He had a notepad, a camera, and he was off trail in an area where typically, you know, somebody just wouldn't be going just to look, you know, or take pictures. And he was definitely either had a recorder on, you know, where
so
he was
recording.
Yeah, he's documenting something. You know, and over the last couple shows, I really start to think back at this, and I'm like, look, you know, if there's a primatologist and an anthropologist associated with these federal teams, you know, they probably wouldn't be in areas where there are known, you know, populations of these animals. You know, they would be more looking at new habitat, you know, and new ranges, you know, and sign for where they're migrating and moving into. You know, that would be where they really would come in to shine. You know, in my opinion.
Right, you know, tracking movements and such.
Right, exactly. So, you know, over time, between that time, I start really, you know, getting into this. Now, I've had a couple of situations this past summer to where, you know, I felt really uneasy. And like I told Wes, you know, I always, without exception, I trust my gut, but I listen to my head. You know, and I do a lot of night fishing in very remote areas. You know, near our vacation home, we have a couple of ponds that are connected by creeks and things like that. And this summer, I was doing some night fishing. Well, there were a couple of unexplained splashes, you know, near an area where I was. You know, I'm not going to say it wasn't a fish, but it definitely got my attention. But not only that, the creek empties into this pond. Actually, a couple of ponds are connected to each other, actually small lakes, but they're connected to each other through creeks, and then it empties down to a larger lake that empties out into Lake Michigan. So they're all interconnected. And the place where I launch my canoe is right at where this creek empties into this little lake in this pond. And it is probably about 1-2 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking my canoe, you know, towards that area, and my spidey senses are going off. You know, I'm like, you know, previous caller said, you know, head on a swivel. You know, I'm constantly listening. You know, there's nobody out there. You know, and I was feeling super uneasy. You know, and I'm the type of guy that I'll go up into those dunes at night. You know, because we got people who light fires, you know, on the adjacent property, you know, and we've had some cottages that have been damaged, you know, from fire and things like that. So we really kind of manage that, you know, and the property owner adjacent to us, who I will not name because he's very well known, you know, he owns 600 acres along the Lake Michigan shoreline next to us. And, he doesn't manage it, so I go up there every once in a while and put campfires out and, ask people to leave and, call the sheriff's department and so forth. So, but since that time, I have not done that at all. I just feel really uneasy. Anyway, fast forward to, let's say, I think it was November 29th, if my memory serves me right. A kid was out doing some hunting and fishing in the Allegheny State game area, and something had happened to him. And when the authorities were called, a couple of other people were out there and saw his vehicle, and his canoe rack was off of his car, laying on the boat launch, along with his kayak paddle. And the paper quoted, as saying something just wasn't right with the situation, so they called the police. Well, the police decided to come out and start looking for him, and they didn't find him the first day, and then the second day they were looking for him again. And this area is in the Allegheny State game area is it's huge marsh area, and it has a creek that empties into the Kalamazoo River, then flows up my way. But the thing that struck me odd is they called the Michigan State Police helicopter in to look for somebody in a narrow place where he could have been, and when they did find him, he was found by divers, but not by the helicopter. You can see it's really covered in woody, but it's something that typically you wouldn't bring a helicopter in to look for somebody. That you could tell.
Did they ever say what happened to him? Did they ever say what happened?
Well,
to him?
they're saying that he drowned, but they're not saying in the article quotes that they don't know how he came to where he was and how he drowned. So there's an old Ian Fleming saying that once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, three times is enemy action.
Right.
And I tend to start putting all these things together and saying, lack of animals. I heard things. Things in my area have been. In the sign around my area, trees have been like twisted down. We have footprints that we have seen. There's actually a bunch of pictures that I took of a set of really long strided footprints between one end of a short dune. Pardon?
Is there a history of sightings around that area?
No, not really. Not really. If you go to the the BFRO website, they have one that was like 2007. But we haven't had a lot of things happen. There was something that happened in 2002 up at my cottage when my dog, flipped out a little bit, but I can't say what that was. And like I said, I go through those woods and through that area without a care, until recently.
Right.
Let me ask you, the gentleman that they found dead, didn't they find him like 8 miles upriver?
Oh, my friend? Yes.
Was that that was your friend? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was my friend. He was found 8 miles upstream in the Saskatchewan River on a sandbar, wearing only, like I said, only his running shorts. What do you say?
Now, was he camped up there by chance?
Yeah, he was he was camped at the Rampart Creek campground.
And how far
on the Icefield Parkway?
How far was he
About
found from
13 miles, or 13 kilometers, 8 miles north of there, northwest of there.
Yeah, that sounds very unusual.
And like I said, he was an infantry Marine. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that the only reason he was found at all is because he put up a hell of a fight. Like I said, he wasn't of any great size, but he was tenacious as hell. And
well, we sure appreciate you telling us that. That's a very personal account, and it's tough to speak publicly on those sometimes.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of those things that it will bug me forever. But I truly have faith in my gut. My gut says there's something going on. Which led me to basically you guys. Your site, your show. I would say your program more of a show. Some other people have shows. You guys have a program. But
we appreciate that.
and it caused me to be a member, and I'm not some guy that just goes out and, signs up for things, but I'm on board. I think you guys are doing a hell of a job, and I think you just see it out to the end, no matter where it takes you.
Well, thank you so much. We really do appreciate that, and we appreciate you too.
No problem.
Thanks, Matt. It's odd, the 8 miles. A lot of people, if you've ever been out in the forest, traveling 8 miles,
a long way in the forest.
It's a really long way, man.
Country.
Yeah,
you may as well triple that distance.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder. I mean, sad situation.
I was going to say, it reminds me of that when I mentioned that football player that was killed and I can't remember what the distance, I think a mile away from where he was supposed to be, and the firefighter here in California a few months back who was 1,200 feet in elevation above where his camp was, and he took off in just his underwear, supposedly out chasing his dog.
Yeah.
I was going to bring Snowbird on next to talk about her encounter. One thing I want to talk about before I do that was I was contacted by a fish and game representative that handles, and this is something I didn't know. So if you own, like, let's say a ranch or a farm, and your livestock gets killed, let's say by a wolf or something, the government will actually pay you for that livestock being taken from you. I guess it makes sense that would be their income. But the government will actually pay for any sort of livestock or something like that being taken from a rancher or a farmer. And I was unaware of this until I was talking
I hadn't heard
with
that either.
Well, what she is, so she's a fish and game representative down towards Yellowstone, and and I questioned her a little bit on that. She says, well, what happened is back in the day, these guys would go and they'd hire their own hunters basically to go hunt down, if they thought a wolf was killing their livestock, they'd go hire their own sources to go out and basically slaughter animals in the area. And kill the wolf, basically, yeah. Kill the wolf, kill the predator in the area to make it stop happening. And what she was telling me is I guess they're having a pretty bad winter down that way. Outside of the park, there's several farms and several ranchers, and they're having their livestock come up missing. A lot of livestock coming up missing. Dogs, cows, sheep, horses, a lot is coming up missing. And when she went down, when she was investigating it to find out what predator, is doing this and talking with the ranchers and going through whatever process that they go through, she had emailed back and she was talking with me about it. And she said that it appeared that she was asking me, how strong do you think these creatures are? She's like, around the office, they'll kind of talk about it depending on who you talk to. But if you talk to anyone in authority in the office, they won't talk about it. And what happened is she's like, do you think they're strong enough to carry off a cow? And I said, well, why do you ask that? She goes, well, on a couple of these ranches, it looks like big footprints coming in from the wood line. And she's like, the only thing I can liken it to is like they're just picking up animals and taking them, or picking up sheep and walking off with them.
They
do it to absolutely. And she said that one of the scenes that she came across that upset her was it appeared that it had broken a horse's neck, not only one horse, but several horses' necks, and they were dragging them off. It was just a real interesting conversation I had with her, and I'm getting more and more information from her. She hasn't agreed to come on the air yet, but that's a conversation I was having earlier today. I wanted to kind of share it with the audience that this is going on down.
On something similar to that, I put a blog post up on the website last night, and this was in reference to a guy from the South, Mike. I can't think of the guy's name offhand. Mike Clark, who I interviewed a couple of years ago, and he's a Bigfoot researcher in the South, and I think Alabama's where he's from. But there was some talk about an area there where, and they knew it was a Sasquatch because people who lived in this area seen it quite a few times, and it started doing some kind of vindictive killings. And the articles that were printed talked about 40-plus animals being killed by this thing. And while it doesn't say in the article it was a direct response or, directly related to the creature, the witnesses talk about seeing this thing and then hearing this scream that it emitted. But when he told me during the interview about the killings, he said oftentimes there were horses and cows and pigs and large animals like that were actually, their necks were broken, oftentimes on the back of the neck where their spinal column is. And anybody who's familiar with animals like horses and cows and pigs knows there's very thick bones in their necks. And these things were bitten completely through, killing the animal. They weren't eating the animals in that case. They were just killing them out of spitefulness, basically.
Yeah, guys, I wonder with the last few episodes that we've had, how many people might be more inspired to come forward. I know that even Wes and I were talking today about how online community has really, taken the ball and run with it and gone, there's something really wrong going on here. So I hope that more people come forward to talk about this.
Yeah, and I think they will.
And there's certainly a lot more going on than what people think there is with this subject.
Yeah.
Both with the creatures themselves, the witnesses, and people in the government who may be involved with all this. We don't know what extent or what their reasoning is, but, and I said it before, it could very well be there's very good reasoning why they keep it quiet and whatever it is they're doing with this, but we simply don't know. But we do know there is something going on there.
And again, if you have a question or comment or you want to share an encounter, the number is 646-716-8791. I want to welcome Snowbird to the show.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. You wanted to share an encounter?
I guess I do. So I guess you guys usually start by asking people like how they know about this in the first place. Well,
I usually like to know what somebody's knowledge was before their event took place.
Right, and I'm Native American. If you can't tell by the name, they went all wounded knee on me. But so I'm actually from. My mom grew up on the Karuk Reservation, but I grew up in Arcata, California, for the most part. But my mom and dad had some tribal land from my dad in Oregon. It was in Butte Falls, I guess. So that how I have knowledge of it is because, and I can't get into too much detail because that's my mom's story, and that's Native Americans. I have to respect a lot of things, and a lot of Natives, we don't talk about a lot of things with other people, and it's not an arrogant thing. It's more of like an honor kind of a thing. So what I will say about her, so forgive me for that. But what I'll say, I'll keep it brief, is that when we were really little kids, there were definitely Pudawans. That's what the native word up there is for Bigfoot, and it really translated into Bigfoot. What the original meaning of it, I'm sure I can tell you guys this, is it means devil. It means demon, demonic devil, kind of things like that.
And I knew from Native friends a lot of times the terms were cannibal or mountain devil or something devil. It was never usually a good connotation.
And it usually isn't. The thing is, this whole new movement of finding Bigfoot and all these things, if you truly listen and use your inner wisdom, if you truly listen to the elders, which I feel super ashamed for not doing, because you'll find out in the story, I didn't listen to the elders, and I guess you could say curiosity almost killed the cat. So my mom,
what they're talking about.
Yeah, so I know. I've actually went and Googled your guys' story. I've heard a few stories on here, but I wanted to know your guys' story, so I went and Googled and I listened to some. So anyways, I'm not going to be one of those people who ramble on, so let's keep it going. Okay. How I have knowledge of this is when we were little kids up on my mom and dad's property, which was deep, deep in the woods. I guess it would probably be at the base of the Cascade Mountains, I believe. kind of down from Mount Hood, in between Mount Hood and Butte Falls. I'm probably wrong. My mom's probably like, that's not where it's at, but whatever. Either way. So we were little kids, and my dad was off. He was a logger, and so a lot of the time he would leave my mom up there by herself, and she had 7 babies, and she was a young girl, pretty young, yeah. So Indians, natives back then, started having babies pretty young. So anyways, she was left up there alone, and all the kids were asleep, and she was up there, and basically, long story short, because like I said, I can't get into too much, she heard them talking outside of the window, and this was what people now call samurai chatter, I guess, and she heard them talking, and she knew it was them, and she said that she just kind of went into that rabbit mode, like you freeze, and you don't even want to breathe too loud, you don't want to make a noise, nothing. She knew it was Bigfoot. She knew in her, a Pudawan is what she called him, she knew in her soul, like in her body, she knew that that's what they were. She'd never heard them talking. She'd heard legends, of course, from the elders, but she knew immediately when they started talking that is what they were. So that's how I have knowledge. I heard that story growing up, and of course other stories from the elders, to never go out after night, that there has always been a truce between Native Americans and that tribe of they're beings. We call them a tribe of people, too. They are people to a lot of Native Americans. So anyways, I'm going to get myself in trouble talking too much. Anyways, so it is another tribe of people, though. And there's always been legends. We are not legends, but just, we honor you have respect. You don't go out after night. That's their time, and that's their time to hunt. You stay indoors. And when you are out in the daytime, you stay on well-walked paths. It's kind of a truce between the Native Americans, especially the Yurok and the Hairy people. I don't know what word in their language they called it, but there is a truce. You stay on the path, and they'll leave you alone for the most part. But even women and children, they don't go out alone, and they always stay in twos and stuff. So these are the stories I heard from the elders. So I grew up in Arcata, California, where this whole finding Bigfoot thing is, and I always listened to my inner instinct, and I knew that it was true, but I don't know, something about it I was a little intrigued, and I just kind of wanted to know. So long story short, my husband lives in Shawnee, Oklahoma. He's a full absentee Shawnee, and so I went out to visit him. I really wanted to go up to Humble and see my family up there, but he was like, he really wanted me to bring our son down to Oklahoma. So I was like, okay, well, if we go there, I don't want to sit in Shawnee. I want to be in the woods because that's where I'm from, and I wanted to be in the woods. So I said, we have to go camping. And he said, okay, we'll go to Tishomingo. And Tishomingo is on the border of Texas and Oklahoma, and it's a very, very woodsy area. In fact, Tishomingo, if you Google it, is the tiniest little town. You would literally, if you blink, you might miss it. It's a tiny town. So in this tiny town, they have a hunting reserve on the it's called Scotty's Blue River Hunting Reserve and Game and Fishing. And it was, the reserve is open, but it wasn't hunting season. This was in July of this last year. So it wasn't open. There was nobody there at all. In fact, we were the only people camping in this whole reserve. And so at 10 o'clock, the ranger leaves. He locks the gate at the reserve, and he leaves. And so the gate wasn't locked yet because it wasn't fully dark yet when this happened. We had lots of fun. We were swimming in the river and chilling. I was cooking over an open fire once we came back to the campsite. And we had been talking about, because I haven't really been camping since, a lot of this Bigfoot stuff has been coming out and, like, all this stuff. So I was a little bit curious. Like, I knew it was real, but I don't know. I just wanted to see, like, I don't know, what kind of a response I would get. So, of course, watching these stupid Finding Bigfoot shows, I did, like, a whoop call. And I thought, I was like, hey, I did it pretty good, actually. I think I sounded like a Sasquatch. And David, my husband, was making fun of me. He was like, you didn't sound like no Sasquatch. You sounded like a cat or something. And so he was making fun of me. And literally, like, just like he only had probably, I'd say maybe 30, 40 seconds of making fun of me. Like, you didn't sound like a Sasquatch. You sound like a cat. And as soon as he said that, from directly across the river. So let me give you a little visual, because I'm really bad at this north, south, east, all that kind of stuff, and how many hundreds of feet or yards. Like, I don't even know how y'all even measure that. But anyway, so I'll give you a quick visual of the camp. The camp, if I'm facing east, because I know which way the sun came up because I never slept that night, facing east was a cleared-out meadow place. It wasn't really a meadow. What it was is like a big roundabout that went to the other campsites, and we were all the way furthest on the west, so directly behind us was nothing but really deep forest, and directly in front of us was that little meadow. So then to the right of us, which would be north, I believe, yes, was a little creek that dropped down. And that was literally like, okay, maybe, no, I don't even know, maybe 30 feet off of our camp. It was really literally right off our camp. And then to the left of us, which would be, I don't want to sound stupid, whatever, it was to the left. So that was the river. It was like a little trail that went through these trees, and then there was the river. And it wasn't like a place that anyone used or anything because it wasn't, the banks were really high. You couldn't really get down to the river, so it was just the river there. And so, okay, let me back up even before that. We were getting firewood after playing in the river. We were getting firewood for the camp and stuff. And there was, now I know because I've been obsessed and researching all of this stuff, so now I know what these things were. There were stick structures, and there was broken, humongous broken trees. And some of them weren't even broken. Some of them were just bended down and put underneath of another tree. And we were tripping, like, what is, you know what I mean? Like, we didn't even know what this was. Now I do. So that was in the daytime. So the ranger is probably still there. The sun is almost all the way down, and I'm cooking. I did that call. David's making fun of me. Not even 30 seconds later, from directly to the left across that little riverbank, there was the most strangest noises ever. What it sounded like, I'm going to say that there was at least 5 or 6 of them. Some of them sounded like cows, like mad cows. Some of them sounded just straight like I would probably even say gorillas, like some kind of crazy noises that I've never heard, which once again, I grew up my whole entire life deep in the woods. I know what all these noises, you know what I mean? I know what coyotes sound like when they're like, you know what I mean, going crazy. I've heard foxes make some of the most insane noises. I've heard the scream of a cat, of a bobcat, I mean a mountain lion. Though it does at the beginning, when you first hear a mountain lion screaming, it does sound like a woman. But it always ends with that meow, like it does that meow part. I probably sound so retarded. But it does. It ends with a cat sound, like, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I've heard all the barred owls. I've heard lots of different owls. I mean, you name it. I've heard a lot of noises. And these noises, some of them were like, it sounded like something imitating a cow. That's the best way I could explain it. And then it also sounded like gorilla noises, and then just mumbo noises. I don't really like mumbo jumbo, just like I don't really know what the noises were. But me and David immediately stopped our laughing, and the energy, because, I mean, once we were native, it was an energy that hit us even more than the sound. It's kind of hard to explain. We both just stopped our laughing, and we looked at each other, and I knew I made a mistake, and he knew too. We just quickly put away our food, and we were very quiet after that. We didn't talk. Sometimes it's the native way. Like the energy was different. We knew that something was wrong. And it was already pretty much, the sun was pretty much down at that point, and it probably gets dark around 9 or 10, 9, I'm going to say, in the late summer out there. So, you know, we knew that there really was not any chance of us hurrying up, hacking up, and throwing everything in the car and going and trying to make it out to the ranger in time. And besides that, we weren't, I don't know, it didn't hit us. Maybe we would have tried if we would have known what was going to happen, then we would have tried, but I think there was still a little bit of a hesitation, like we weren't quite sure.
A little doubt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So my son is getting fussy. He's tired. He's 2.5 during this time. He's 3 now. He turned 3 in September, so really he was actually he was almost 3. So anyways, he was getting tired, and we needed to get stuff out of the car and stuff like that. So David goes and he goes to turn on the car. And this is a brand new car, mind you, brand new. It was fully full of gas, everything. We didn't leave no lights on, nothing like that. He turns on the car and it's completely dead. And we're like, what the heck? He opens the door and goes, the car is dead. And I'm going to say maybe like, I don't know, probably not even 100 yards, because it was close enough in the bushes that we heard it clear as day. As soon as he opens the door, stands up and says, "The car's dead." Something from the bushes directly behind us in that deep woods, so exactly west of us. I mean, I probably sound stupid and crazy, but it literally something from the bushes laughed at us. It sounded like a chimpanzee and a human kind of mixed. It literally was like, like
I've
I
heard
really
that.
can't.
No, I've heard that noise myself.
Have you really? I sound
Yeah,
so
not
insane.
right here, yeah.
This is not normal. I am not
Oh, no,
saying
we would have sworn there was a chimp above us in our camp.
that's exactly what it sounded like. It sounded like a chimp, but more of a bass
Right.
tone to it. Not quite so like, I sound more high pitched and more like a monkey, like a young chimp. This sounded deeper.
Right.
And it was strange. It was strange that it did it when David said the car is dead, because we have no idea still, even after they came and everything happened and they fixed the car, they have no idea why it died, what happened. I'm not saying that the Sasquatch or whatever this is did this, but I thought it was pretty peculiar that
It was bad timing.
it was very bad timing, but it was also just very strange. And it was strange how whatever it was knew. I felt like it knew what David was saying, and it laughed. It was just very strange. So we had no lights to like look in the. So we get out flashlights and everything, and I'm getting the clothes for Jalen, and all the whole time we're hearing stuff around the camp. Not too close, but close enough that it's kind of, it's definitely unnerving. And I put the baby to sleep. We, do all of our night stuff, and I put him to sleep, and the car is directly next to, so the car is facing on the side of the river. So that's east, south, north, or it's facing south, from the south side next to the river. And the tent is directly on the opposite side of it. And then our fireplace where we were sitting around and having, dinner and stuff like that is probably, I'm going to say maybe 10 or 15 feet, maybe a tiny bit more, I don't even know, from the tent. So I put the baby to bed, and he's in there sleeping, which now I have a lot of guilt because I've done a lot of research, and I'm just like, this stuff, it's just insane. So we put him in the tent, and we're sitting by the fire. And as it gets later and darker, we can hear them. Like, we straight hear them come over the river and come onto our side, and they're literally circling us. They're coming around the
I was just going to ask you if they were circling the camp.
They circled our camp, and they kept making all kinds of noises. And I get a little scared and choked up just talking about it. I kept looking to David, and David is, I don't know if you guys know Native people, but he's a Native man, and he's trying to be very strong, and he's trying not to, talk very much and not very let out any emotion or anything. And I'm more of a girl, and I grew up in Humboldt County, but when I was older, when I was 16, I moved to San Francisco, and I've been a fashion consultant, so I'm what Indians would call me more Hollywood or whatever. So I'm more girly, and I'm like, did you hear that? I was like, please don't tell me you're trying to tell me that was a coyote or whatever it was, because the noises we were hearing, I'll tell you all the different animal noises on top of the chimpanzee kind of noises. We heard pig noises, cow noises, rabid coyotes, hyena kind of noises, and chimpanzee noises. And then also we heard owl noises as well. We heard owl noises too. So all these noises are going all around us, and I kept telling him, I'm like, David, tell me you didn't hear that, or tell me, I'm like, you think that that's a coyote, really? And he would just be like, and he wouldn't really want to talk. He would just shake his head yes and stuff. And, we both were scared. He didn't have to say too much to me. The energy, we knew, like, we were terrified. And we obviously couldn't go look for more firewood, but all the stuff that we had right around us, we burned it until there was nothing left to burn, because a feeling inside of us knew that once the fire went down, that they were going to creep in. And it was just a feeling. And so we sat there, though, for a few hours, and my baby was sleeping in the tent. And like I said, we sat there for a few hours, but all the wood was gone, and there was really nothing left but coals. And we were scared, so we were like, let's just get in the tent and let's do it. And so we did. And I told him, I said, everything has to be put away. We cannot leave out any food whatsoever. Everything has to be put in the car. And he's like, okay. And the top of our tent is completely net or screen or whatever, because it's a really clear, beautiful night. Yeah, mesh, exactly. So we get in the tent and everything, and I'm sitting up to like adjust stuff, and I look up, and on top of the freaking car, I could just kill David for this, is our laundry basket full of food. And I was like, David, you can't leave the food up there. What are you doing? And he was like, they can't get up there if it's raccoons or anything. I'm like, no, if there are any bear, if there's anything, what do you think they're going to come right for the food? Like, you can't do that. They'll even break windows. Bears will break windows. Like, you think that they're not going to come out here? And so and we'd already been hearing a lot of noises, like right around, but not super close. But as soon as we got in the tent and stuff, this happened in a matter of, seconds and stuff, that I see the food. So I get back out of the tent, and as soon as I open the door to the car and I go to grab the laundry basket full of food, something throws a rock at me. And it comes directly straight. It doesn't fall from the tree. It doesn't come, obviously if it didn't fall from the tree, where else would it have come? But it came in a straight line directly over the top of the car, bounces off the car really loud, and crashes to the ground. And David yells, "What the hell was that?" And I didn't answer. I just grabbed the basket of food. I still have chills. I grabbed the basket of food, and I shove it in the car, and I lock it. I slam the door, and I press lock. And before I could even turn my back all the way to get to the car, another rock comes and hits the top, the front part of the car, the hood. And it bounces off, and it hits the tent, and it hits David. And it's a big rock, and it hits him in the ankle, and he yells, "What's going on?" And I basically just lose it. Very shaky hand, because I have a shaky hands now just thinking about it. I opened the tent, and I got in, and I closed. Before I could even finish zipping it up, more rocks came tumbling at us. And David's like, "What is that?" And I just bawl. I just absolutely lose it. I'm like, "They're throwing rocks at us. We got to get out of here. You have to try to start the car." And I'm just hysterical, basically, but I'm trying not to be too loud because I don't want to wake the baby up, because I think that if I wake the baby up and he's crying, it's going to be even worse. But I'm hysterical. I'm like, "You have to try to start the car." But David, he was like, "No, we can't run. We can't do that." He grabbed my hand super tight, and I'm like going to tear up just talking about it. But he said, "We're just going to pray." And we just prayed for a long, long time. We sung Native songs, and we prayed for a long time. I'm sorry. It was just it was like an emotional moment for sure, because not just because that's what's happening, but people are so beautiful. Like, when we're forced and put into these situations, I feel like so many people truly rise. In our spirits, we truly show how powerful we really are, and how good human beings really are, how we cling to each other, and just, we pray, and that's what we do. So it was a very emotional time. But while this was happening, so while we're praying and singing, they come in. They literally just come into our camp. They are not shy. They're we did not sit up. We didn't move, so I never saw an outline of one of them. We could hear them all around us. They were making noises. They were I don't know if they were talking to each other, if they were just squawking at each other. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They were all around us, though. There was one that I call the Watcher, because he never left. He stayed in our camp the whole entire night, and he communicated with the other ones. That one that was the one that was 30 feet off of our camp in the little creek bed that we were gathering firewood from. It's literally probably 30 feet, my feet. I'm only 5'2". I'm super small. My husband's 6'2". Men are always tall, women are always small. But my feet is probably 30 feet steps off into where the Watcher was, what I called the Watcher. He stayed there all night, and he communicated with the other ones. There was one directly west of us out in the woods, and we could hear him crashing around out there and stuff, and he was further out. But the one that stayed, they all came into the camp after they had been throwing rocks, and I got back in, and we were praying and all this other stuff. They all came into the camp, but then after a while they spread out, and then one stayed in our camp the whole entire time, and he communicated with the other ones around us the whole entire time, and then we could hear what I would probably call yes. Okay. Yeah, and what I would call probably young ones, because they were imitating owls and other animal sounds, but it sounded like something imitating an animal. It did not sound like the actual animal, and they were moving. They were lower to the ground, and they were moving in that little field, the little circle field out to the east. They were just moving around out there. And the bigger one, the one I called the Watcher, stayed there the whole time, and he'd communicate to those littler ones. And then David, after a while, he finally fell asleep, which I have no idea how he did that. He woke up right away when this happened, though. There was movement in the trees. Remember I told you how the whole top of our tent was mesh? Well, these huge trees in Oklahoma, this is the perfect camping site because the huge trees shaded it just enough so that it was perfect. Like it wasn't too sunny, it wasn't too shaded. It was absolutely perfect with these huge trees. So I'm laying there and I'm seeing movement up in the trees, up directly above us, and I don't know what it is. Now I believe that what they were doing, I think it was young ones up in the top of the trees looking down on us. That's what I think was going on. But there was some kind of movement. They were making noise up there. And then there was I'm guessing, I think there was two of them because one was on the riverside, and the other one was on the creek side. So that would be, so that's east, west, north and south. They were north and south in the trees. And then I don't know what happened. I'm guessing maybe one jumped from the other and they were fighting. I don't really know. All I know is the loudest crashing in the trees right above us, and a humongous branch broke and fell through the foliage of the other trees all the way down. You could hear it crashing into one and then down into another and down another and then fall down on the ground. And then you could hear all the commotion up in the trees. And then that's when David woke up, and I was like, there was like debris, like pieces of leaves and stuff falling down on the tent. Nothing big. It was nothing big that like fell on us. Thank the Lord. But so yeah, that happened. And then he woke back up, and he stayed awake basically until the morning. And they all stayed there. The Watcher stayed literally in our campsite all the way until the morning. I had to go to the bathroom so bad. I was so terrified. I could not go to the bathroom. Until the sun fully came up, and we heard the Watcher leave. We could hear him literally every step. You can hear them walking around in a circle around our tent, going from in that creek bed down to the west side, down all the way to the south side where the river is, and walking, going back across the river. I'm sorry?
When did they finally leave?
In the morning. In the sun, yeah, daybreak. The sun was literally going to start coming up over the mountains. They stayed that long. And I don't know if it's because – I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I could tell you a couple of things. One that was interesting when you talked about all the different noises, and I wished it was an old reference. I can't remember which tribe it was from, and the wording was translated badly. It was translated into English as ventriloquist. Or ventriloquism.
Yeah, no, I've heard this before.
Yeah, and what that meant was that they would imitate animals and even people at times. And your situation was one that I myself went through back in 1976 on the Nisqually River, not far outside of Fort Lewis, Washington, where we went into an area out near the river where there had been some activity reported. And we had a group of them that surrounded the camp and circled us all night long until daylight. In fact, one of them even pulled one of the guys out of the tent.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. We were there. We'd been hearing the screaming. We heard the scream, and I had seen Sasquatches. I had seen two of them a couple of years prior to that myself, within about 10 feet. And so we knew what the scream sounded like. We heard them. And we heard one a few hundred yards from the camp, and another one about a quarter of a mile away would answer it. And this would go on back and forth for a half hour or so. And so we kept listening, and one of the guys got tired, wanted to go sleep, so we decided at first we were going to do it in pairs. I said we should probably keep awake all night and in teams. So it didn't work out anyway. We told the guy to go ahead and go to sleep, and the other three of us were sitting around the fire, between the fire and the front of the tent. And we hear this noise, this rustling inside the tent about 20 minutes after we went in there. And, of course, we were making kind of crude jokes about him being in there by himself. Pretty soon he just about tears the tent down, coming out, and his look on his face was just wild. And he was kind of a big guy. And he said, it's not very funny, you guys messing with me while I'm trying to sleep. And we're just kind of looking at each other like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, that would have been a great idea had one of us thought about it. And I'm, being kind of practical, I said, look, if there really was, I said, you weren't sleeping and dreaming. No, I never fell asleep. I lay there and listened to you guys talking. I said, all right, if there's really something to this, there has to be some sign around the tent because the soil was fairly soft around there. And it was in a cedar thicket, so it was a good area. I said, well, toss me a flashlight. Let's take a look. So we went back there, and here are these 18-inch footprints impressed in the soil, very clear, had come from the tree line. And I said, well, tell us what happened. I mean, what was going on in there? So he said, well, I was laying there, and I thought when you guys were reaching under the tent, this was one of the old canvas.
Right, that didn't, right, it was like the army tent that didn't have the bottom, right.
Exactly. So he thought, his theory was that we didn't want to disturb him by coming in and out of the door, so we just reached under, because all of our packs and food and everything was in there. And he said he thought one of us was rummaging around. Then this hand reached and grabbed his lower back and then started to pull him out of the tent. And when he started struggling, it let go. And I said, well, you're a pretty big guy. How big was this hand? Where did the heel of the hand start in your body, and where did the end of the finger stop? And when he showed us, I said, well, good Lord, man, the hand had to be more than a foot long. None of us has a hand that large. And then we saw the footprints, and then I saw where it had knelt down, which was only a couple feet behind where I was kneeling. And then this escalated. The things were surrounding the camp and screaming and making all these noises. And like your husband, finally we ran out of wood. We did exactly what you did. We burned everything possible within reach. And finally, when we ran out of fuel, the fire went out, and we were exhausted. We sat down next to a really big spruce log and went to sleep. We figured if they were going to eat us, they were going to eat us. There was nothing we could do about that.
And you know what? That's so true, because that's the conclusion you come to. I know it sounds so horrible, and I hope that this all goes back to, like, when you start talking about the tent thing, it goes back to my guilt that I have about leaving my baby in the tent, because, I mean, literally, I have heard so many stories now, the missing 411 kids. I mean, this stuff, it truly freaks me out, and I have a lot of guilt that,
I wouldn't feel guilty because you didn't know at the time.
I didn't know.
And that's don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is like, once again, too, when we were in the tent, this was happening, you get so scared. There's only a point of fear that it can reach. You know what I mean? You kind of just come into your mind that, like, okay, if this happens, it's going to happen. Everyone is, the only thing that's certain is that we will all die one day. And that, natives, we always kind of have this thing in our language. We say, hoka hey, it's a good day to die. You know what I mean? We are so blessed to be here on this earth, and we have no idea how long we will have. And it's just, but it's terrifying when you think about that. And I hope no one judges me for saying this, but I just remember thinking that if they get us, that I just hope that they kill my baby as quick as possible, or all of us, so that we don't have to suffer. I didn't want Jalen to have to suffer. So I remember thinking that, and you have to be super terrified to think something like that of your own child. I mean, this is like my baby, you know what I mean? So it was pretty insane. The next morning, and I'm so mad at myself because I wish I would have went down into the creek bed, because all the ground in Oklahoma when it's summer like that, it is hard as a rock. Like, there was no prints or anything in the campsite itself. It's literally hard as a rock out there. So I got brave enough, and I have video of this. I don't know if you guys want me to send it to you, but I got brave enough, and I took my camera and I walked that little stretch through the trees and the clearing down to the river. Very, like, timidly though, and I had a stick that was burning, because there's spiders freaking everywhere out there, and they're all in the trees. And in the morning, you can just see all the webbing, and you walk through it. So I was like hitting the webbing, and I was recording, and I recorded some of the noises because they were over the river and you could still hear them. And so I recorded some of the noises. And this old guy who wanted to camp there for the rest of the summer, who wanted our campsite, he came back, because he came earlier in the afternoon and said that he was going to come back in the morning, and because he knew we weren't going to stay for more than that time or whatever. And so he came back super early in the morning, and my husband, he's so passive, like, he's so quiet and just like whatever. The guy came back basically right after the sun came up, not long after that, and was like, okay, park this trailer, like, right there at the beginning of our campsite. And I was like, this guy has, like, he's so rude. Like, you know what I mean? He's basically, like, telling us to leave. Like, give us some privacy.
Wow.
Like, it's so rude. But my husband's so passive, and he's always, like, telling me I'm such a drama queen. Like, let people just do what they do. And I'm always like, no, stand up for your rights. Like, that's not fair. Like, we paid for this campsite. He shouldn't run us out. Either way, of course, we left, though, and then when we did leave, I was so mad because I remembered that down in that creek bed where the watcher was all wet ground, and I guarantee you there had to be prints down there.
More than likely,
so
right?
Pretty mad about that.
Well, we'd love to see the video.
I was wondering, as far as your tribe goes, what are the repercussions for, you mentioned the rules for, respecting the Sasquatch, as you mentioned, as a people. So do you think you broke rules that night?
I did.
And that's why you went through what you did?
Yes, I did, absolutely. I know that they could have killed me if they wanted to, and they didn't. I absolutely did break rules. It was, first of all, I was somewhere where people weren't. It's another kind of respect thing. That hunting reserve it wasn't hunting season, it wasn't fishing season. It really wasn't just like a camp place. This is a hunting reserve. So it wasn't hunting season, so I feel that maybe the Sasquatch felt that was their time of the year. People didn't come up there then, and I was cooking. I had made this really, really good, totally organic, I'm such a hippie, fully organic, lasagna at home in this Dutch oven, and I brought it with us, and I put it on the fire. We froze it really good. And we brought it with us, and I put it on the fire, and oh, man, as soon as I opened the top of that Dutch oven, the smell was literally intoxicating. And then it wasn't maybe 30 or 40 minutes after that I made those calls. So maybe they thought because I felt like I was so good. I was like, this was such a good call. They must have really thought it was a Sasquatch telling them there was food over here or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll tell you what, though. When we had our experience, we were cooking food that had a really strong odor, too, and we think that's what drew them in.
Yeah, and then I called them on top of that. You don't do that. My people always, you don't do stuff like that.
Don't ring the dinner bell.
Them. Well, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Don't ring the dinner bell.
And that's exactly what it was. Like, I was so disrespectful. I let that smell all out into the air, and then I called them, and then they came over. And then I left the food. I didn't, but David left the food out for them. And then when we went in the tent, maybe they thought that was left for them, and then I jumped back out, and I put it away, and that's when they got aggressive.
Organic lasagna, that sounds delicious.
Not going to lie, mine's the best, but I'm sure all women say that.
I get unruly, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so growing up, you were told that these were people. And
yeah, well, we do. We think of them as beings, yeah.
Beings and people are, there's a lot of, I guess it's all how you translate it. But I'm just kind of curious, is with from what they have told you and then what you experienced, if these were, I guess where I'm kind of lost, and maybe you can explain this to me, Snowbird, if these are people, and please don't take any of this wrong way, but if these are people, and there was an agreement between your tribe and this tribe of people out there,
yeah,
then why would there be a need to warn you not to go in the area? Why would there be a need to tell you don't go out at night? Why would there be a need to, if I have an agreement with my neighbor to not step in his yard, and him and I have a peaceful agreement that, hey, I'll stay out of your yard, you'll stay in mine, and then I accidentally stumble into his yard, it's probably not going to be a big deal because we have this peaceful agreement. But if they were telling you from an early age, hey, don't go out at night, women and children stay away from it at night, why would there be a need to warn you on any of that if you guys had this peaceful agreement with these things?
Well, I don't know how peaceful the agreement was, and the thing is we have to remember that the way we think and what we think is just and what we think is the way things should be done, like, hey, I accidentally tripped and fell, and I fell on your lawn and messed up your grass, like, yeah, you should let that go, but that's the way human beings think. That's our mindset. That's the way we're wired. That's not necessarily the way another being is wired, whether if that being might be, don't think I'm crazy, but might be like an extraterrestrial, it might be a gorilla, silverback gorilla, or it might be a Sasquatch. You have no idea. There are different rules with all beings. That's why I'm not really calling them humans, but they are a being. They're an intelligent being, you know.
Yeah, let me add a little piece, if I might interject. The Snohomish people in north central Washington, when I was doing some research for my first book, they have, and I talked to a lot of Native folks all over the country in Alaska and Canada, and what the Snohomish have to say is very interesting. They classify people in different categories, and they have at least three. One where the normal Indians with their encampments and such were like the most civilized. Then there was a less civilized grouping, say a Group A and then a Group B, that would be more nomadic, have a lot less possessions. Then there was a third category that were totally wild. So, and one of the elders of the Haida tribe that I was communicating with for a while, he was very interesting in what he told me. He says oftentimes with different tribes, it depends on their experience with these creatures. You know, and they're not really animals and they're not really humans.
Right.
That's a whole different can of worms. But like you said, you're right about how they're viewed. And it really depends on the tribe. It could be the band. It could be a family or even an individual's experience with them, how that particular group views them.
That's what I was trying to clarify, and I appreciate you clarifying it, Snowbird. One of the things, I have a Native American friend up north, and you know, my grandmother was full Apache, so it's, you know, him and I talk. Yeah, him and I talk all the time.
That's what I am. That's what my dad is. My dad is 100% Mescalero Apache.
Yeah, well, they're the best Native Americans out there. I mean, if I do say so myself.
We might be biased, but neither here nor there.
Yeah. No, and him and I talk all the time, and he said that, hey, I have an agreement with and I flat out know there's Sasquatches in the area. I can see it, tons of sign. And this guy kind of grew up with them in the area, and his grandmother taught him to leave out fish. And what he does is basically, he says, well, I have an agreement with them. And I go, really, you have an agreement with them? He goes, yeah, we have an agreement with them. What my grandmother taught me is they had a place where they hung their fish to dry. It's a little shack out by their place. And this guy had been seeing these things his whole life. And his grandmother taught him, leave fish out twice a month and leave them out for the Sasquatch so that they'll leave our shack alone. What was happening, his grandmother was saying, is they'd come rip open the shack and basically raid it and destroy the shack. And they got tired of it. And his grandmother twice a month started leaving fish out, so they'd leave it alone. And that's basically what she passed on to him was, you don't do it every day. You don't leave food out every day. But and by doing it, for whatever reason, they leave this guy's shack alone. It sounds like flute player stuff, but it was interesting to hear him kind of explain it. You know, this is what was happening before. Here's what we did, and now it stopped.
But you can get a conditioned response from other animals the same way.
Right.
So it's not really out of the question.
No, I have to tell you, my mouth is kind of like on the ground right now because the fact that came from like an old Apache woman, I feel like sometimes the creator works, that's what natives call like the God, whatever you guys want, whatever you call it. We call it the creator.
Right.
I feel like he works in such mysterious ways. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but whatever. I think that's so incredible that you said that because I've been watching these gifting stumps and all these people feeding them and all this other stuff, and I'm like, well, I've also heard stories of people doing that, giving offerings to them, and I'm actually on my way. I'm moving back down to Oklahoma to start a little permaculture, an organic permaculture farm, and I'm like, where I'm buying is the most rural area, and there is tons of Sasquatch sightings. And I'm like, how do I deal with this? How do I come in a good way and establish things in a good way? And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll leave them some pies. Maybe every now and again I'll leave them some pies and just kind of hope that they take our presents because everything that will be used on our farm, around our farm, in our home is 100% biodegradable, non-toxic. I mean, just everything. I basically make almost all of my own products, So I'm like, I don't think that they'd be angry for me living there because I won't be hurting the land. I won't be taking from the land. I'll So I'm like, how do I do this in a good way? And I just thought that was so insane that you said that, because that's kind of already what I was thinking. Like, maybe I could keep them away and keep them happy by just giving them some offerings. So that's pretty awesome, Wes. Thank you for that.
No, what I would do is, Snowbird, is, our people created the scalping, is I'd buy a big gun, go back to your Apache ways. Go back to your Apache ways. I said, our people invented scalping. Go back to your Apache ways, buy a big gun, and let them know who's running the show.
Seriously. No, and I will. I've actually never even shot a gun before, but I know that I have to be honest, and I have to be serious here. This is not a joke. I have to protect myself and my child and my family.
That's right.
Our livestock. I have to take it. I can't be like, oh, these are peaceful brothers, and we're going to go make flower necklaces together and stuff. It's not like that. This is a real serious situation.
These things have a short temper. Keep that in mind.
They do, and people go missing all the freaking time. It's insane.
They're very territorial. Territorial. And like other primates, in a way like what they were doing with you guys, they were doing a very aggressive display. Sort of challenge. They were challenging you, and also I think with the young ones in the tree, they were probably teaching them. And from everything I've read and talked to a number of Native buddies of mine who talk about how their people were here before these things were here before their people came to the continent.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They ran them out of the hunting areas. And one of the things I always say that, everybody says, well, humans got to where we are because of our intelligence, but we're also an extremely aggressive and violent species.
Yeah, that is true. Only now in the last 100 so years have we lost that, and people have become soft. Before that, every man had a gun.
Exactly.
Every man knew how to fight hand-to-hand combat. It's only now that we have been what I call enslaved.
And we've hunted everything on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure there were a lot of friction between these things and humans, and they knew to stay. And I think that's where the basis of that agreement. They knew to stay away from humans because we're dangerous. You mess with one, you get a whole bunch of them after you.
Do you guys think there's a happy medium between, peace offerings of, like you were saying, Snowbird, a couple times a month, and then graduating to, what we would call habituation or feeding, every day or every other day? Do you think there's a happy medium there, and what's the number that, what's the cutoff there?
I don't really think so.
I kind of think there is. I think the thing is if you feed these creatures all the time, they're going to expect that, just like a bear. They're going to get aggressive and they're going to get angry if their pie isn't out there every Sunday. So I don't think that it should definitely be a continuous thing. I think that it should just be. I watch Barbara Shoop. I don't know how to say her last name, Shoop or Shoop. I'm not sure what her last name is, but she gives them pies and she rings a bell and she lets them know when she's there and she lets them know when she's gone and when she's leaving and stuff. And I think that was such a good thing to do. And definitely, please believe, like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go out there strapped like Rambo. But I'm going to be strapped while I'm bringing them the pie with my little organic everything and all of that. I want them to know that, like, that it is a peace offering, and that I don't know that they will know that. I mean, we are just assuming that these are more intelligent and whatever. We don't really know. That's the bottom line. We have no idea what they really do think and how they're wired. So
save the pies, buy ammo.
Yeah,
that's right. Stay away from the Sasquatch. Don't feed the Sasquatch.
Yeah, but it's going to be in like 50 years from now, just like the people hand feeding the bears at Yellowstone. Now there's going to be signs, don't feed the Sasquatch.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's the same thing. I even thought the guy was kind of crazy leaving the fish out for it. I wouldn't leave a fish out for a grizzly bear twice a month. It just wouldn't happen.
I know, because obviously...
Well, you say, no, that could go on for years very peacefully, and then all of a sudden it could go bad very quickly.
Right. What if there's a drought or something and the fish aren't running and then you barely have enough for the winter and then they're angry? So you're right. I don't know if that's really the right thing to do. Maybe just stay away from them altogether. I think
that's the best policy.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you, actually. Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up, Snowbird. I appreciate you
Yes.
calling in. Thank you for sharing so much. We really do
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
That was really good. That was really good. She did a good job. She did a really good job. So I appreciate everyone calling in tonight. Appreciate everyone sharing their stories and their encounters with us, even though it was kind of short notice. We appreciate everyone. And I apologize to all the people we didn't get to. I know we're running out of time. But
We'll
if
do
you
it
get a
again.
chance, yeah, we'll definitely do it again. And if you get a chance, please visit us at SasquatchChronicles.com for all of the uncut audio, extended extras, and much more. Until next time, everyone, have a great night.